way to remember it, but effective.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm Molly O'Brien. I'm pleased to welcome Taylor Politis. Hello!
Hello! I'm so thrilled to be here.
I'm so happy to have you back. Taylor is the author of The Rebel Wife. He is also one of the Goat Hill writers, and we're talking about all of the stuff you've been doing lately.
So much stuff.
The Goat Hill writers have been super active this spring, and we're gearing up to talk about a couple of events coming up. One big one tomorrow, and then more happening later on throughout the month of April, and then more happening in May. So you have been very busy as well as the other Goat Hill writers. So we're happy to have you here in studio. Thank you for joining us on the last business day of March.
Right? Yeah, amazing. Time flies.
It's gone by fast. So let's start off by talking a little bit about the big event happening tomorrow at the Providence Public Library. Going to be discussing and diving in about short stories with some award-winning writers.
Yes, absolutely. Goat Hill Writers is me, Ann Hood, and Hester Kaplan, who are amazing writers, and we are thrilled to have Bill Rohrbach, also an amazing award-winning writer. Both Bill and Hester Kaplan are Flannery O'Connor Prize winners for their short fiction. So two real master storytellers talking tomorrow at the Providence Public Library at 2 p.m. about their work, how they write short stories, how they approach the idea of their work, where they find inspiration, what the challenges are. So it should be an exciting talk, a really interesting talk for people who love literature, who love short stories, and for people who want to write short stories or who have a writing practice of their own that they want to develop. And we really do focus on writers who enjoy reading, but also writing.
And that's what I think is so cool about Goat Hill Writers, is that you not only are you three are very talented writers in yourself and offer a diverse mix, but you also bring in award-winning writers like this to offer different perspectives as well. And I think that gives it a really neat perspective for people who are coming up in the writing scene, looking to add a mix to their portfolio. Talk to us about what you're looking forward to for this event tomorrow.
Well, I think one of the things when we formed Goat Hill that we wanted to do was leverage our connections to a national network of writers, publishers, editors, agents, and so all the programs that we do, we want to bring people from outside Rhode Island here to talk to our local community of writers and to help develop, cultivate that community. So I think that tomorrow the talk is really going to be focused on, what is a short story, what makes it interesting, what makes that experience compelling, and how do these two really talented award-winning writers approach their work and struggle through the process of writing. Because writing, as anyone, I'm sure, whether you're writing an article or a research paper or a short story, it's a struggle to sort of express in a clear, elegant way. And that's what, we hope these two are going to share with everybody in the audience.
And every bit of advice and noteworthy note can always help, right?
Yes, absolutely. Always learning, always learning.
Always learning, which is what's so cool about the community here in Rhode Island. And it's so nice to have someone like yourself here, or whether it's through another organization, always getting writers, authors, readers in here to talk about it. I feel like the community of writers here in Rhode Island, it's so great to have and build that up and to embrace that.
To embrace it and to really cultivate. I think there is a really strong writing community in Rhode Island. There are many people who are writing on their own. There are a lot of writing organizations, and we think, in the way we build programs and the way we build workshops and seminars, the other things that we offer to writers here, what are we contributing in addition to what is out there? How do we offer something that other people, people can't get anywhere else in Rhode Island? And I think that professional network exposure to that national professional network and the expertise that we have developed as writers in both our work and being professionals in that network are two key things that we really think are special about what we offer and what we can bring to the writers here in Rhode Island.
100%. So that's tomorrow. The event is tomorrow at the Providence Public Library, Saturday, March 31st at 2 p.m. Cost?
Yes. No, free. No cost. Free. Can you bet? You can't beat that. No registration, no cost. Just show up. 2 o'clock, Providence Public Library. It'll be a party. It'll be a party.
You're in. That sounds so cool. Okay, so there's another event coming up called Creating Characters.
Yes.
This is part of your spring seminar workshop series, which is so neat. You've had a couple of these already moving forward. So the next one, Creating Characters, is on April 16th.
That's right.
It's the last seminar in the Creative Writing Seminar Series. Held at School One over on the east side of Providence. Talk a little bit about how these seminars have been going for you and really what the feedback's been like.
Yeah, they have really been phenomenal. We, as I said, we are looking for ways to connect with a writing community here, to help cultivate that writing community. So we offer workshops. I'm running a 7-week small group workshop with writers who are bringing their work to the table. We talk about it, develop it. We thought, what are some other ways that we can connect and support a community? Not everybody can commit the time that you need to a big workshop. So Hester Kaplan, thought, well, what about a seminar series? So, over the course of the spring, 3 evenings, 6 p.m. to 8:30, where a writer, someone who has a writing practice and wants to develop that to get some insight, can come easy, low cost, low commitment. Just come, engage, have a discussion that helps elevate your thoughts, your approach to craft. The first seminar was the narrative engine, so the idea of how do you get the story started. The second was creating emotions. As we all know, the works that we remember the most, the ones that are most impactful, are the ones that make us feel the most. And so developing an understanding of how to really touch the emotions of the reader is crucial. And then this third one that I'll be leading is creating characters. How do you create a compelling character? How do you even approach the concept of what a character is and does in a literary work, in a short story, in a novel? So that's what will, that's the sort of the background on why we thought this was a great thing to do. They've been sold out, so we only have a few seats left for the Creating Characters, so definitely get on it. And it's something, too, that we want to keep doing. We've really had such a great response to this. We'll offer a new seminar series in the fall, so definitely stay tuned for more.
Cool. Okay, so that's another thing we wanted to talk about today. In light of and preview of the Creating Characters seminar, we want to talk about really what is a good character? How do you create a good character? And then hopefully lead into your workshop, kind of build that anticipation, right?
Totally.
Maybe
yes, a little teaser, a teaser. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What really makes a good character, and how do you create that when you're just starting out?
I think that we get story ideas, writers get story ideas from all sorts of places, but it always comes back to people, to characters. And for me, a starting point is that word character and the various meanings it has. Like we all know, hanging out at the bar or in the office, that guy is a character. So we're talking about a strong personality, someone who has a really distinct persona, habits, personal tics, a way that they see the world. So the idea that first and foremost, a character is a strong personality that we can see, feel, understand through the pages. And that comes through the details, the way you build that character, the way you show that character to the reader, through concrete details, through the things they do, the things they say. So that's sort of the starting point for how this seminar will go, but also for how I approach the idea of what a character is and how you develop a strong character in a piece of fiction.
Does the character make the story, or does the story make the character, or does it really depend on the kind of writer you are and the kind of story that you want to narrate and evolve?
Yeah, I think it's a really individual sort of approach. It is the story you're telling really determines all of the balance of all these things. So who the character is, what they're doing, how they see the world, all the choices that you make about that character have this sort of interactive relationship between how you conceive of the character as a person and a personality, and also the action, the struggle that they're engaged in. What do they want? Why do they want it? What are they willing to do to get it?
Yeah, exactly. What I think is interesting too is, going back to my literature days in high school and maybe some in college, is character doesn't always have to be a person, right?
That's
so
right.
if you're looking at it from something, you can build a strong character in an object or
Yes.
a place, right?
Yes.
How do you approach that when you're writing? If you're building up this character that's not a person.
Yeah. For instance, in some of the classes I teach, we just read a short story where the storyteller is a green parrot from Puerto Rico. So, right.
Sounds cool.
When we say, it was a great story, when we talk about character too, we're not talking about people necessarily, and yet the character possesses whether it's an object or an animal or a thing, possesses all of those human qualities that we, feel and see in each other. And so that's what makes a sort of a character who's not a person really compelling as well. Investing an object, and that's a surprise too, investing an object or an animal with these human qualities has a certain appeal, a sort of allure to it as well.
Can you ever develop a character too much in a story, do you think?
I think that is a great question. We talked in my class last night about a story we all read, and we discussed it. And some people felt like there wasn't enough about one of the characters, that the character was two-dimensional, flat. We didn't know enough about the character to really get a feeling, connect emotionally to the character. So it depends on the story. Again, I think that does that character really need to play a bigger role in the story? Other people in the room felt like the story really wasn't about that character, and so the action, the transformation that occurs, and this is another key element that I'll talk about in this Creating Characters class, is there are characters who change. Stories are about change, are about transformation, and so having a character who is a certain way at the beginning and realizes something or has an epiphany or sees the world in a different way by the ending. This is the experience, the transformative experience of story. Not all characters in the story are going to have that experience, and so you need less from them. You definitely need more from that character who's going to be undergoing the change.
So they can have those types of relationships.
That's exactly right.
I think that's so fascinating and so interesting because we all perceive stories different, so we all are obviously going to tell stories differently.
That's right, and that's what's amazing, that we all have our own voice in all of these classes. It's not about me or anyone telling someone in the room, this is the way you should write a short story, or a novel or whatever. It is about saying these are ways, techniques that people use to develop and build effective stories. You as the writer take that toolkit back to your writing table and you figure out what works for you in the story you're telling. Because it is, right? It's a totally individual, very personal endeavor.
And hopefully you can take that journey well. So you're a historical fiction kind of guy.
Yeah.
So how does that work when you're building characters? How can you make sure you're being historically accurate in a way, but still building those characters in the way that you want to tell your story?
Yeah, that's a great question too, especially about historical fiction, because you want this verisimilitude, the sense of realness, the reality of the world. The reader wants to be confident in the authoritativeness of the writer, that they're creating a world that is historical. The reason we read historical fiction is this sort of time travel. We love to go back in time and feel like we have an experience that is embedded in that moment. And so how do you create that? And there are all sorts of pitfalls and all sorts of ways. Research, of course, is the crucial sort of element. Being in the space, so Providence, for instance, is a historic city with a lot of that historic fabric that still exists. So being able to be in a space that has that sense of history, there are, places on the east side, Fox Point, that you can really feel that sense of time travel. But connecting with the voices of the people of the past is my key way. And so that takes research as well, looking at letters, looking at archives. Diaries, I find, are really compelling ways to get into the head of a person, particularly a diary, a letter someone is writing to another person with a purpose. A diary often is someone putting down their own reflections in a way that they don't expect other people to read. So Mary Chestnut in South Carolina during the Civil War was a diarist who was recording her thoughts and events that happened, this momentous experience of the Civil War. She knew it was momentous. She was recording thoughts and details for use later in her own writing, but that diary that she left has become this incredible resource, gold mine for getting into the experience, and was a key way for me to get into the experience of a woman in the 1860s who was ambitious, who was smart, who was witty, who was politically astute, who wanted to participate in these conversations, but because of the way gender was perceived and the way women's roles in society were restricted, she felt this frustration. And you can read that between the lines of her diary as well, which is a fascinating thing to discern and then to be able to use when you're building, again, creating characters.
And it's so neat because you can use historical text. You can use something that really happened to be able to work off and build your own character as well. So it's so fascinating. So if you're interested in that spring seminar series, that is April 16th. And before we let you go, Taylor, do you want to, last time you were here, we were talking about the Wright Rhode Island Awards, or the Wright Rhode Island competition. That is wrapped up, to my understanding.
Yes,
can you fill us in on what happened?
This is our second year. Goat Hill has partnered with School One on Providence's east side to build this short fiction competition for high school students, grades 7 through 12, across the state. So we, again, in our second year, really tried to push and get more people involved. We had over 30 workshops in libraries and schools across the state. We had over 150 submissions. Of those submissions, we chose 3 top stories and 17 additional notable stories that were published in a short fiction anthology. We had a great award ceremony on March 18th at the Newport Art Museum. All these kids, their families, their teachers were there, honored for the work that they did. These amazing stories from across the state: Woonsocket, Central Falls, Barrington, Charahoe High School. So truly a geographic distribution of stories, which was amazing. And the content of the stories about, family life, loss, doubts about the self, secrets, all sorts of things, from fun, zany, madcap stories. There was a particular story that I loved called Marie Nottingham about a witch school. So really fun, crazy, wonderful, dramatic, powerful stuff. So wonderful to be a part of it, wonderful to wrap up our second year and begin planning our third year.
I love the fact that our literary community is so large, it continues to grow at the middle school level and above, and probably starting even earlier.
And that's that cultivation, I think, that again we're doing workshops, having these seminars for adult writers, but getting in touch with young writers, getting them writing at a young age is the way you really build literary community, and we're so thrilled to be doing it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you,
Taylor
so
Paulides
much.
with Goat Hill Writers.
Thank you.
Tomorrow there's a big event at the Providence Public Library that's free, and then the spring workshop seminar series is April 16th, so you can catch him there as well. And he'll be back, I'm sure.
Yes.
So we're going to take a quick pause and get set up here for our next guest on GoLocal Live. Hang tight. Hey everyone, Molly O'Brien here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm joined by Paul Kindarian. How are you today, Paul?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad to have you here today. Paul's going to share his story with us, but first let me give you a proper introduction. So Paul is an Army combat veteran who served in Afghanistan, and he's a former member of the 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 10th Mountain Division. He was one of the speakers at the Rhode Island Department of Health event Owning Our Story about the overdose epidemic, and he was speaking with the Creating Outreach about Addiction Support Together team. So Paul's here sharing his story with us about overcoming addiction. You're in recovery now. Congratulations on being sober.
Thank you.
And thank you, of course, for serving our country. So we had your dad in here a couple months ago, so it was great to talk to him. We had Anna Bess with Coast in here a couple months ago as well, so now we're happy to have you here in studio as well.
Full circle.
Full circle, right? So wanted to have you in here today to share your story. Not only are you out there talking with other people, doing public speaking events, but you're living your life as well, going to school. So you're doing a lot of things. Why don't we start off by hearing a little bit about your story and the recovery process and your journey on healing?
Well, I grew up in Taunton, not too far from Providence, but I started using like a lot of kids. Found prescription pills in a family member's home. Started very small amounts, just taking them on the weekends, and it grew and grew and grew, and then I had to step up my usage because I started getting used to the smaller amounts. And before I knew it, I was at a orientation for a job one day, and I started feeling very achy, legs couldn't sit still, my legs hurt. I left and went and met a dealer, bought a Percocet 30, broke it in half, and as soon as I placed it on my tongue, it all went away. And I remember thinking to myself, like, that's it, I'm an addict. And it's just, I hit the ground running. I finally got clean in 2010 because I wanted to join the Army. I felt like there was a way out for me, so I joined the Army, clean. Deployed in 2011 with the 10th Mountain Division, Charlie Company, and came home different, as most combat vets do, and I wasn't ready. I didn't want to come home. It was a very turbulent time, and I didn't know how to deal with this new pain, this new stress, being here when my friends aren't. You know, I lost 3 really good friends, Tobin, Contreras, and Jeffries, and then just a litany of other friends, a list of other friends that have lost limbs or something has to deal with it, and I wondered why me. I wasn't good enough before to live a clean life and attribute anything to society, so why do I get to not be dead or maimed? And, you know, the Army had there was nothing else for the Army to do for me or me for the Army. I went home and I tried to numb the pain, and that took about 2.5 years of heroin, being broke, losing jobs, just doing everything I could to survive. And thankfully, my father forced me to go to the hospital, the Providence VA, because I had infections due to injection, which is very common for addicts. And I was there for a week and a half, almost 2 weeks or something. And Lynn Dion, who saved my life, you know, if she's watching, I love you, Lynn. She never gave up. She just wouldn't take no for an answer, and she got me into the methadone program, which I'm weaning myself. Well, I'm not, but the medical professionals.
You're doing it, though.
Yeah, the medical. Yeah, exactly. So I'm with my medical team in Causeway, Boston. We're weaning off of the methadone now, and I'm in school. It's my last year. Looking into graduate programs and doctoral programs, and I'm feeling things again that I hadn't felt in years. Feelings, you know, when you get clean, you have feelings that you didn't feel for that whole time, and it's an odd thing to go back to. But I'm happy every day that I'm here. I have something to give back, and you know, that's what I'm doing.
Well, congratulations to you, and like you said, every day is a new day.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit, what I think is so interesting, something that you said to me, is that you're fighting the stigma, you're fighting 2 stigmas. It's almost like 2 battles that you're dealing with. It's the stigma of being a combat veteran, and then the stigma of being an addict, a recovering addict, I should say. Talk to me what you mean by that and how that's different than what maybe just a regular person is going through.
Well, one thing about the recovering addict, I'm always an addict. The rest of my life I'll always be an addict, but it's that active recovering, and thankfully I'm in the latter. But going through life as just a combat veteran alone is tough, because you come back and you have this feeling that the world doesn't want you anymore, and the saying that everyone loves a soldier until he comes home and stops fighting is felt by all of us, and it's a lonely feeling. And then you add on an addiction and the numerous things that come with that: depression, anxiety, then the PTSD from the war, and it's just a concoction made for someone to feel lonely and ostracized from everyone else. I mean, it's that feeling of being alone in a crowded room. It's what every day is for us. And so having as I've come to term it, the battle on two fronts, it's the perfect storm of self-destruction. And instead of just relenting and just giving up, I've found strength in a lot of different ways, and that's the biggest thing for me and for a lot of addicts and veterans and combat veterans, disabled veterans, is to find something that gives you purpose again, like we had when we were overseas. And it's I've heard it referred to as the siren song, war, and how I talk to my brothers about it all the time, that we miss it. We miss Afghanistan. We miss that. And when you leave, you don't have a purpose anymore. And so I found my purpose in psychology, in school, and in doing this outreach work is where I find my purpose again, because I know I can contribute something that I didn't think I could. And thankfully, I'm winning that battle on both fronts.
I think that's so powerful to be able to say finding purpose, and I think that message has such a broad outreach, especially since we're going through this epidemic right now. Talk to me a little bit about what that's like for you. We'll stick with the veteran issue. It is so hard to know that people coming home from serving our country don't feel like they're welcomed, or don't feel like they have a sense of purpose. That has to be, I can't imagine. That has to be so devastating. What's your message to people dealing with that issue just alone?
We all have our personal hells. Everyone goes through something that's, we don't know each other's stories. And it's kind of walking on eggshells, in between walking on eggshells and being curious about asking questions, unabashedly. You need to find a good medium. It's people are gonna bring up bad memories. Bad memories are gonna come up, but not everyone is against you anymore. The enemy is there, not here. And people dealing with combat vets, patience is a big thing, which most people just dealing with anyone is you gotta be patient. But with us, it's something different, where we will come back to who we used to be. Some of us need a little more help. Some of us don't deal with the same thing, deal with things the same way as everyone else. But you just have to bear with us and understand that you don't understand what we went through, which is a weird thing to say you understand. You need to realize that the bond I have with, McCafferty or Greg or Jay is a bond that we won't share, and it's tough for loved ones to realize, but it's true. But if you empathize and you show us that you care and you're there for us, it makes us feel at ease and able to communicate with you. So
let's talk a little bit about your recovery. So you've been sober for 3 years. And what you've said is that you have to have a goal, you have to have a purpose. How do you think that message can be sought for other people that are going through this, trying to seek that journey of healing, that recovery part themselves? If there's people out there that might be watching this that have a loved one that are struggling with addiction themselves, how important was that for you to have some type of purpose?
It's the one thing that's gotten me. For addicts, you know, the what's it, the devil's hand in the idol. I can't remember the saying, but
Yeah.
it's you know.
I know what you're talking about, but I
bad
can't
to
think
be
of it
bored.
either.
That's about it. It's for addicts. It's very bad. Being bored is, you know, your mind just starts getting to you, and you start thinking about things that you used to like, or when you're an addict, you know that this product has ruined your life. I mean, just without question, heroin and opiates ruined my life because of, you know, that addiction. But when we're bored and we're thinking about it, and the urges come up, we don't think about that bad. We think about the feeling of being high. And so I found very early on that if I occupied my mind constructively with school or writing or exercise, for some people, I don't exercise. That's beside the point. But I found my thing. My thing was going to school. I go to, 4 to 5 classes every semester, and I push myself because it's something I found that I was good at. If you have a loved one that's struggling, after they've gotten through the process, they chose to get clean, which is a big thing. Is that you can't force them to get clean. They have to get clean themselves. So when they finally do that, one thing that is very important is to remind them of things that they like to do, or make them go out and try to experience things. It's so easy regardless of your problems or no problems, it's so easy to fall into yourself and just not do anything. Saying no is a lot easier than saying yes, or in some circumstances. So if you're there for them, if you try to remind them of things that they like to do, or just try to expose them to new things, it helps. We spent so many years or decades for some people doing our own thing where it was so self-destructive. Like, I do woodworking and whittling and stuff too, and it's because it's creating something instead of destroying. In the Army, you create this team and this beautiful bond, and then you deploy and you learn how to destroy, and it's so hectic, everything's crazy, you're going and going and going, that when you come home it's odd to be quiet. And so learning to deal with being quiet and bored, that's the biggest thing, is learning to, it's okay to be bored, it's okay to be sad. Those are things that it comes a long way. But
the mental health aspect of addiction is something that our society needs to learn. Mm-hmm. It's a long way that we do have to go. I want to talk to you about the importance of educating people about the disease of addiction, and how we talk to adults and young people differently. And part of what you do is public outreach, is talking to people about addiction. And you said we need to talk to people differently about the disease itself. What do you mean by that?
We've all been through DARE programs when we were kids, and in 4th grade, the cop comes in, and in the old commercials, at least in the 90s, it's your
the egg.
It's your brain not on drugs. The drug. It fell on deaf ears for a reason, because it was boring, and it was just like, okay, older person, like, I get it, they're bad, but you're just talking down to me. I was a rebel as a kid, and fighting back and everything. So if you said anything to me, I was going to go against it, because that's just the way teenagers are, and that's not going away. So talking to kids especially, where I think is the biggest issue, is relating to them and understanding that if you just say no and no and no, this is all bad, they're gonna push back. It's in our nature. So talk to them like they're an equal instead of like a child, or talk to them, yes, there's a reason why I started doing drugs. I didn't do my first drug and then my life fell apart. There's aspects to drugs that are appealing to people, but the end result is what destroys lives, and making that choice. And I spoke at a high school, I think South Kingstown, last year, and I told them, yes, drugs, people take them at parties and they're fun and all this good stuff, but if that means you're going to ruin your life, potentially die, hurt everyone you love, is that really worth trying to find out if that drug is worth it? And it's not. Take it from me, it's just not worth it. And I think talking to people like they're not stupid. And I think a lot of medical professionals will just talk down because they have a degree, and it's not how we need to communicate anymore.
Yeah, what do you say to kids when you're going out and you're speaking to, I mean, we should say, I don't want to say kids because, 17, 18-year-olds, they're not necessarily, they're not kids anymore. They're doing things. And drugs out there, they're not, I mean, you could be smoking marijuana and it's laced with fentanyl, which is terrifying. So, or there's people out there that are taking pills that are also laced with fentanyl. They think they're taking maybe a Vicodin that they get at a party and it's laced with fentanyl, and then that's it. Or they could be taking pills from their parents' closets and medicine cabinets, whatever. And then, like you said, that's how you started. You were taking medication, and then it led down the road to heroin use later on. What do you say to kids when, I mean, what's the message if you're getting questions and that kind of things? Like, what's just the, like, harsh reality? Like, look, you don't want to do this. I mean, what do you say when that's what you're dealing with today, right?
I mean, it's especially in today's age where, I mean, it's just everything's there.
Yeah.
You can do anything, and it's like, okay, I can literally find out anything I want. Well, I can't feel something, so why I should feel it? And I always was that, let me try this, let me do this, and when I tell my story, I usually get into the very bad things that happened to me, or the fact that I had to go to a hospital and be admitted for almost 2 weeks. The fact that they couldn't find a vein on me, so they had to go through one side of my chest, and then they realized that I was so desperate, I used a vein in my neck to administer the drug, and they couldn't go through my chest on this side. Like, that's what drugs do. I mean, I am 3 years ago the end result of that just wild experimentation. I mean, there's people like me and a ton of other great speakers or great people who I look up to that can tell you this is what it's like. You don't have to actually experience it to know that it will ruin your life. And a lot of kids, it's gonna go one ear or the other. I was that kid. It's just we have to find our own. We have to make our own mistakes in life. But there are kids who can listen to us, and it will affect them if they've seen it in someone they can relate to. I'm not some suit or somebody walking around with a diploma like, say, I know what you're going through because I have a diploma from X, Y, and Z. Like, that's not it.
But you are getting your diploma.
Yeah.
And with the efforts to eventually help others, which you already are helping others, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So, like you said, senior year and getting your psychology doctorate. With hopes of furthering your education as well at UMass Boston. So just having to deal with a little Boston traffic along the way.
Yeah, that's that'll make anyone drive to drink or use. But hey, we all go through it. Right?
So, Paul Kandarian, thank you so much for sharing your story with us here today. We really do appreciate it. If you're interested in more about Coast, I will have a link on the website, and we really do appreciate you sharing your story with us here on GoLocal Live. All right, everyone, we're going to get set up here for our next guest on GoLocal Live. Hang tight. Thanks for joining us here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm Molly O'Brien. I'm pleased to welcome, and I'd like you to say hello to Executive Director of the Tony Award-winning Trinity Repertory Company, Tom Parrish. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be here, Molly.
So excited to have you. So recently, Trinity Rep announced their 2018-2019 season, so we wanted to have you in, talk a little bit about what is coming up, what we can look forward to. So thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. We have a great season coming up here for 2018-19, which we announced last week. And it's one of our largest seasons ever. Epic scale, epic stories, many familiar characters told in new and exciting ways. And so the season starts off in October and runs straight through May. I can tell you about those shows now.
Yeah, so we're really excited about that. Before we dip into it, I want to talk a little bit about kind of what went into this. And like you mentioned, one of the largest productions that you're putting on, and also you have the commitment to offering a more diverse storytelling as well, having more women on board and more people of color being able to tell stories. Talk about Trinity's commitment to that.
Sure. So we read literally hundreds of scripts every year when we're looking to choose a season. We really think about, what does the community and the audience need right now? And part of our role as a cultural organization is helping to shape and grow and innovate in Rhode Island culture. And so part of that is making sure that we are telling everyone's stories and providing an equitable, diverse, and inclusive environment for that storytelling. And so we're really looking for stories from a variety of voices. And because most of our tickets are sold on a season subscription to subscribers, we want to ensure a great balance amongst the season with comedy and drama and musicals and classics and new plays, everything all together, so people get a really exciting year.
And really kind of reflecting what's happening not only now, but reflecting the community that it represents, correct?
Correct. So we had a lot of conversations about, like, what are people thinking about right now? What are they feeling? How could we help people navigate the world? And that's, I often say that theater is helpful in navigating the gray, because the world isn't black and white. And so by putting stories on stage, people can start to explore those areas that are challenging them.
I think that's so true. So a very exciting season coming up. So let's jump in. All right, so the season begins with Pride and Prejudice by Kate Hamill. So we're talking a little bit about that. What can we expect?
Well, this version of Pride and Prejudice is hilarious. It's an effervescent new adaptation, but it's the classic story of Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy and the will they or won't they get together, and but it's told in a really exciting and contemporary way. So it's a lot of fun. Actors playing multiple characters, and it's fast-paced and minimalist in its set design. And Kate Hamill's done some amazing adaptations of Jane Austen pieces. There was one recently at American Repertory Theater. She did Sense and Sensibility, and both Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice, those adaptations are being produced all over the country over these past few years and into the next season.
So she's got Jane Austen down.
She does.
So that runs October 4th through November 4th. So we could look forward to that. And then Trinity Rep will continue the long tradition of A Christmas Carol, November 8th through December 30th.
Yes.
Always fun.
Always fun. It's the 41st anniversary season. This past year's Christmas Carol was the highest selling show in Trinity Rep history, which was fantastic. It was a very Merry Christmas at Trinity Rep this year. But a fantastic production. The show always sells out. We have one of the top 5 highest selling Christmas carols in the country. So it's very popular. It's a big tradition here in Rhode Island and southern New England.
It'll be hard to top that, but I'm sure it will happen.
Yeah, here's hoping. I hope every year we can break the record, but we'll
Here's
see.
hoping.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, we gave you the dates for that, and then following the beginning of the new year, Marcus Gardley's Black Odyssey. This looks so cool.
It is very cool. I read the script and was blown away. It's totally breathtaking theater. It's the type of story that can only be told in the theater. It's epic in scale. It's going to be beautiful on stage. It's basically an adaptation of Homer's Odyssey, but set with an Iraqi war veteran, presumed dead, who is trying to get back home to his family, being controlled by a host of gods, some benevolent, some not. And he has to revisit his past and his ancestral past, and it really integrates African American history of the past 50 years with Homer's Odyssey. And so that's going to be very exciting. For people who love The Mountaintop by Katori Hall 2 seasons ago, they will love Black Odyssey. It's directed by the same director, Kent Gash, so we're very excited with that. And what makes it even more exciting is we are pairing it with an adaptation of the Iliad, a production, a solo show called An Iliad, where a lone poet tells stories of gods and goddesses and war over the millennia. And it's a breathtaking tour de force performance.
Okay, so that An Iliad, that's just the one person, and that's for 1 week only, February 6th through February 10th. So, I mean, that's just incredible, and I think those two shows are going to be outstanding. Yeah. Very exciting. Okay, so then we're looking at Macbeth, so another classic that runs through January 31st through March 3rd. What's in store for Macbeth?
Well, it's a classic tale of a man pursuing his quest for the throne of Scotland, bloody and full of battles and evil witches. It's a fantastic Shakespeare. It's one of my favorites. It's also his shortest play, so it runs pretty quickly. But a great story. Lady Macbeth is a wonderful character. Is one of theater's great sort of paths to madness as she confronts her guilt over how they rise to power. And Kirk Columbus, our artistic director, is directing it, and he has some special plans for it that aren't quite solid yet. So we won't let the cat out of the bag.
So we're not filling you in quite yet, but it should be exciting. Okay, so then this is neat. So the world premiere by Lauren Yee of The Song of the Summer. So this is pretty neat. March 14th through April 14th, the world premiere here.
Yes, so we commissioned, we have a grant from the Steinberg Charitable Foundation that allows us to commission plays. And so we commissioned Lauren Yee, who's one of the hottest playwrights in the country right now, being produced all over, to write a play specifically for our acting company. And this play, The Song of Summer, is about a young pop star who has written that song of the summer that everyone knows.
So cool.
And the play is set where he's left his concert and went back to his hometown to meet up with his old childhood piano teacher and connect with some folks from his youth. And it's really a heartwarming comedy, and it's sort of about fame and the price of fame and connecting back to your past in order to move forward.
I love that idea, and there always is a song of the summer, so
Totally
I'm just
is.
thinking what it was last summer and trying to think the summer before that.
What was it?
It was Despacito.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Now I'm trying to think of what it was before that, and what,
I was thinking about Gangnam Style at some point, right? Like that was some song of the summer.
Yeah, that was probably, I don't know what year that was, but yeah.
Yeah.
We'll say that'll be the song for the play.
Okay. I don't know what it is. We actually, so for
Did
the
you
play.
write- did they
well,
write
no,
one?
for the play we have to write the song of the
right?
summer because it is in the play. So, so Lauren has to come up with.
She has to
come up with what the song of the summer is. But you'll get to see it next
Hopefully
spring.
it takes off.
It will. And if it ends up that the song of the summer from our play, Song of Summer, becomes the song of the summer, that would be awesome.
Oh my gosh, that's so neat. And I love that idea, and I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so when the Song of the Summer is all wrapped up. Oh wait, no, are they running at the same time? No.
The spring overlaps a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Then we're looking at. Sorry, I'm just thinking of the Song of the Summer. Yeah. Little Shop of Horrors. This is fun.
Little Shop of Horrors is fun. is written by one of the dynamic duos of songwriting, Howard Ashman and Alan Menken, and they write all sorts of great scores and music for Disney and others. But the great story of Seymour and Audrey on the Skid Row in the flower shop, trying to, Seymour wants to live the American dream. He wants to get the girl, and sort of what's the price he will pay in order to achieve the American dream. And he finds this plant, and it's a huge sensation, but it turns out it drinks blood and is set on world domination. And for those that don't know, the musical actually has a different ending than the movie. So it's really sort of about fame and the price of fame and the American dream and the cost of that and what happens when you feed the plant.
Has Trinity done Little Shop of Horrors before?
We have not.
Oh, so this will be pretty cool. I'm always interested to see the company's take on shows and whether it's a classic and just reimagining it, or if you haven't done this before, how it'll all work out.
Well,
especially in today's time, right?
Oh yeah. Well,
that's what's always so cool.
It's really interesting in relation to like news and stories and power. Like when you feed the story and it keeps growing and growing and growing until it takes over the world, right?
Yeah.
So there are some relations to the world today. And Trinity Rep, when we do musicals, we always do them in a new and inventive way. We have Ragtime, which is in rehearsals right now, and it's very different than the Ragtime that opened on Broadway in 1999. I mean, that story of nostalgia for the turn of the 20th century it doesn't fit as well in today's world. So we're telling it in a really exciting way. It's going to be fantastic, and the same will be true with Little Shop of Horrors. And it's always an interesting production. That show is an interesting production challenge because we have to create these puppets and the last puppet eats people. So it's a fun production challenge.
Okay, and then the season will close with Marisol, which runs May 16th through June 16th in the Dowling Theater.
Yes, so Marisol is a contemporary classic written by Jose Rivera, who is a leading Latino playwright. And interestingly, Marisol was written about 25 years ago. It came out just before Angels in America. And the story of Marisol, it's about a young woman named Marisol who lives in New York City, and the world is sort of crumbling around her. She's visited by her guardian angel. The angels are in a battle with God to save the universe, and it's like the moon has disappeared and food has turned to salt. It's sort of this apocalyptic world, and Marisol's trying to find hope and a way to move forward in that world where these huge powers are fighting. And so again, topical.
People can probably connect with that story.
all of the plays next year were chosen because they are resonant with the world that we're living in and many of the things people are thinking about. And so we use drama and we use comedy and we use music to to bring the community together to really talk about how to live.
Be able to connect, engage, and reflect on what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think the company always does a really good job at doing that. So that's the 2018-2019 season. Before we let you go, Tom, of course, a big event happening within the community are the Pell Awards.
Yes.
The big gala is coming up in May. Care to share about what's happening?
Well, on Monday, May 21st, we will host the 21st Annual Pell Awards at the Waterfire Arts Center. And it's going to be a fantastic evening. It starts at 6 p.m. with a VIP reception and then the awards dinner at 7 p.m. We will have some wonderful entertainment from the acting company and others. And we'll be honoring some great community leaders, including Morris Nathanson and Janine Chartier and Jane Nelson with Pell Awards for Rhode Island, and then more announcements to come on our national award winner. And it all raises money for Trinity Rep's arts programming and education programs. So it's a fantastic evening, creative black tie. Tickets are available at trinityrep.com if people would like to join us.
Wonderful. Those are always a great evening, and looking forward to the other announcements.
Yes.
Soon to come.
Soon to come. Soon to come.
I can't pull it out of you today, apparently.
No. Yeah. So we're
He's
working
like,
on it.
Nope.
Yeah. No. You're not gonna get it today.
That's all right. Well, thanks so much for joining us. It's always fun to
Great.
get your insight and your intake, and looking forward to the 2018-2019 season. But like you said, you're in rehearsals right now.
Yes.
So this season's still going strong.
Still going. Native Gardens starts performances next week. It's gonna be hilarious, and then Ragtime starts later in April.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for joining us
Great.
here, Tom,
Thank
with
you.
the Trinity Repertory Company. We're wrapping up here on Go Local Live for the 3 o'clock hour. Kate Nagel kicks things off here in just a few moments for all things news and politics. I'm Molly O'Brien. Have a wonderful weekend. Be safe.